Welcome to Game Set Match Up, the podcast where we talk everything partnerships, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome to Game Set Match Up, the podcast where we discuss all things partnerships. I'm your host, Greg Watts, and please welcome our guest today, Micheal Green, GM of Partnerships from Xero. Micheal, hello and welcome.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for having me along, and hello to all the listeners.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Happy Friday. I must ask, because obviously you're from a much better climate. What's the weather like in New Zealand? Even though you're in London right now, what would the weather be like in New Zealand right now?
It's beautiful at the moment.
Oh.
It's height of summer, so I get very envious seeing friends out and about on the water and on the beaches. We trudge through the grey February weather. It's our time will come, Greg,
Our
later
time will
this year.
come. I like that. Our time will come. Well, look, thank you for joining us on the podcast. It's an absolute delight to have you. But let me start with our first question, if I may, in terms of introductions. So perhaps you can give our listeners a little bit more of an insight into who you are, your background and your current role, and a little bit more about Xero, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, hello to everyone listening. I'm the GM of partnerships for Xero in the UK and our emerging markets. The emerging markets aspect covers Europe, Middle East, Asia, and Africa. For us, we have a hub in South Africa and a hub in Singapore. So they're kind of the key areas there. I guess quickly for those that don't know who Xero is, we're a small business financial management platform. So very much at the core is bookkeeping software, so cloud accounting services, but you can do a lot more on Xero, things like paying bills, collecting payments from your customers, managing expenses, tracking projects, payroll, cash flow forecasting, the lot. Xero itself is a Kiwi company. So we started in 2006, and as you can all probably tell, I'm a Kiwi myself. My journey with Xero goes a little ways back, actually. Sorry. I actually began my career as a lawyer. So I started out at one of the big corporate commercial firms in New Zealand. And a lot of the work that I did in the team that I was in at the time was specifically for technology companies. And Xero was one of our clients at the time. So I was very involved in a lot of Xero's early legal work. So things like capital raisings, acquisitions, listing Xero on the ASX. And through that work with Xero as a client, I was lucky enough to be able to join Xero's then very small in-house legal team as Xero's second in-house lawyer. That was way back in 2013. We had about 300 to 400 employees at the time, I would say, and maybe 200,000 customers. And for context, we're now 5,000 employees globally and
Wow.
over 4 million subscribers. So seeing huge growth in the time that I've been at Xero, and feel very lucky actually to have been on the ride. In terms of the coming over to the UK, so I was still in a legal role, made the move over in 2017. I'd actually just been on a trip over here and met a bunch of the senior leaders in our business, talked to a few partners, etc. And it became really clear to me at the time that there was a bunch of pretty important regulatory events coming down the pipeline that our team at the time was very go-to-market focused. We didn't really have anyone on the ground here thinking specifically about them. And I'm talking about things like GDPR, making tax digital, PSD2 and open banking, and of course, Brexit, all big things that were going to impact our business. And so I kind of put up the flag or put up the flare and said that we probably need to have somebody on the ground over there thinking about them. My boss agreed, and I packed up my bags and relocated to the UK in 2017
Wow.
in a legal role. So I was GM of legal and business advisory was the title, and then I guess fast forward a few years. It was actually during COVID. I was fortunate enough to be offered the opportunity to step across and head up Xero's partnerships efforts for the region, and I've been doing that for about 4 years now. Managing a great team and really loving the work that we do. In terms of, I think, all partnerships organizations, as you probably know, Greg, talking to a lot of different partnerships folk, a lot of them can focus on different areas. So maybe just to set the scene, the way that our partnerships team operates, we really focus in on, I'd say, 4 key areas. One is product enabling partnerships. So that's where we work with a partner to deeply embed their product in our product to solve for a customer need. Data in partnerships. So this is where we work with banks to ensure that we can get transaction data into the accounting software for reconciliation purposes. We have a pretty thriving ecosystem of apps integrated into Xero, I'd say. So I think it's over 1,100 now, and we're responsible for managing the largest of those partners. And then increasingly, a big focus of our team is new channel development. So traditionally, Xero's gone to market in two ways. Direct to small business and via accountants and bookkeepers. And so within the partnerships team, we're now looking at how we can go to market via our partners and get Xero in front of customers at the point that they're making that decision to purchase accounting software. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, Xero, me, and the role that we play within the organization.
Thank you. I've got quite a few questions, and I'm not sure I mentioned this, but we're actually a Xero customer ourselves. We have been for quite a
Oh,
few. Yeah. And
a happy customer, I hope.
we're delighted. No. I was just going to say, for full disclosure, completely unbiased, we love Xero, and it's just easy to use, and it's got all the right integrations, and it's wonderful. But no, that's as an aside. But I thought I'd just mention that. But no, what you're doing is incredible. Over the past 5 years we've been with you, we've just seen product improvement. And it's just easy to use. And running a small business or a scaling business, you just want easy stuff to support you, and that's what you really do. So.
Well, I love to hear that, Greg. I'll definitely make sure I feed that back.
No, it's all true. It's on the podcast now. It's all true. Well, look, this is also a lovely segue into our next question from your route from being a lawyer, because I really want to ask, because I know that our listeners will be keen to see and hear, how have you seen Xero's approach change when it comes to creating partnerships? And linked to that, how did you make I mean, you touched on this, but maybe you could share a little bit more about how you made the transition from lawyer to partnerships, and how that feels, or how that felt.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I'll touch on the change that I've seen in my time around partnerships to start off with. So I think when partnerships first became a thing for Xero, there were really two key focuses. One was engaging and growing our ecosystem. So those apps that integrate into Xero and sit on our app store and are available for small businesses to integrate and use. That was a real heavy focus of the partnerships team. So bringing those partners on board and really kind of classical partner management of those partners. And then the second key area that was a very early focus was the banking partnerships that I talked about. So uh, one of the things that the partnerships team had to do was go out, knock on the doors of the banks one by one, and convince them that it was a good idea to execute this partnership and have this integration that would let the customer's transaction data flow into our accounting software. And as you can imagine, when we first started doing that, it wasn't an easy sell. Fast forward a few years, obviously in the UK, we have open banking now, which is really, I think, democratized that access to transaction data. So that's really great and makes it very simple in this market. But that's not the case in other markets that we operate in. So that's still very much a focus. But in terms of what I would say has been the change that I've seen, especially in the last few years, there's been much more of a focus as our business has expanded, as it's got more complex. There's been much more of a focus on how we can leverage partnerships to grow our product. So, partnerships with companies that we deeply embed in our product to solve for customer problems, which we don't necessarily have the resources or the expertise to build ourselves, has become more critically important. And so, some examples of partnerships that I'm talking about there are partnerships we have with the likes of Stripe and Go Cardless, which enable customers who send out invoices on our platform to attach a Pay Now button and get paid either by card, direct debit, account to account payments. We also have partnerships with companies in the bill pay space. So we signed a big deal with Bill.com in the US that will enable our customers to pay their bills from Xero. And we also signed a big partnership with Gusto, which will be an embedded payroll offering that we'll have in the US. So I think, when you have finite or limited amount of resources on a product side, making sure that you invest in your core competencies and then really look to partner to expand your product offering has become a much greater focus in the time that I've been in the role. And then the other key piece, which I think I've already mentioned, is this new channel development piece. So really adding value back to the organization by getting Xero in front of customers at the right time that they are making a decision to purchase accounting software. And so when we think about that on the new channel development side, we think of companies that are really upstream of Xero. So where do small businesses go before they make that decision to purchase accounting software? And there's a few key areas that you can think of here. Things like business banking, so getting a business bank account set up. obviously, company formations is important, so catching the company as they're formed, but also like point of sale companies, right? So if you're a small merchant, collecting payment is the most important thing you can do for your business. So that's the thing that you're probably going to prioritize first. But by getting Xero there right in front of them at that same time as they're making that decision, it's really important. And there are a few other areas like domain hosting, website creation, etc., that we also focus on. But that's probably what I'd say has been the biggest changes in the partnerships organization that I've seen over the last few years. And then your second question was my transition to
Yeah,
lawyer,
from
wasn't it?
the lawyer. Yeah, more around how did it feel? Because obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but I've worked with many lawyers over my time, and you're very much into the detail. Nothing gets past you. And partnerships is absolutely the same, it's a little bit more commercial. How did you feel? I mean, because you come across as very naturally entrepreneurial and curious anyway, but how did it feel, kind of making that change? It's a great change.
Yeah, I can tell you, it felt scary at the time.
I bet it did.
I think you know what I've learned is it's not actually that uncommon to see, I would say, commercially minded lawyers make the move to partnerships or BD,
I can see that.
especially when you've been in a scaling technology company like I have. The role that you do as an in-house lawyer isn't what I think you'd imagine as a classical kind of legal role. You are across most of the deals that happen. So you end up getting this really good library or database of commercial knowledge on what's worked, what hasn't worked in specific deals. And, therefore applying that with the commercial teams and any specific negotiations, et cetera, becomes just part and parcel of the role to add value to the organization outside of just thinking of yourself as a lawyer. So I was very much built like that, I think. And so I guess I did that enough, and I built up enough trust with enough senior stakeholders, and was really lucky to get that opportunity to move over into the partnerships world. Like I said, very scary experience, but exciting to turn your back on the trade that you've paid thousands of dollars to get a degree in, and spent the last decade honing your skills in, and then go to apply your trade in another. But I do think that there are a lot of transferable skills, I guess, from being a lawyer into partnerships, like you mentioned, and things like lateral thinking, problem solving, good deal management, negotiation skills, stakeholder management, etc. And so I really tried to, when I first moved into the role, really tried to leverage the skills that I did have to make up for the ones that I was learning when I came in, and the ones that I was kind of leaning on the team to teach me as I came in to lead the team in partnerships. But I think that's probably one of the things that I do love about partnerships is that, at least when I was at university, there might be now, maybe you can tell me, but there wasn't a partnerships degree that you could do,
No.
so to speak. And so you see people within the partnerships team, and this is clear and evident in my team as well, who have come from really different backgrounds. So you have people who have been in sales and marketing, strategy, operations, and that makes the partnerships team incredibly diverse. And what I've always termed the Swiss Army knife of the organization, just with a really diverse skill set, able to be applied in lots of different areas to support the business.
You really inspired me last time we spoke, actually, by making that analogy with the Swiss Army knife. And I hadn't thought of it before. I mean, our business is predicated on partnerships, but I hadn't thought that, of course, there isn't a classic partnerships degree or qualification. Well, there might be now, but there wasn't certainly a number up until a few years ago. And you do enter it from all sorts of walks of life, from sales, marketing, legal, product, technology. And that has to make the partnerships team not necessarily the powerhouse, but a powerhouse of the organization, because you've got this massively rich pool of very highly experienced people across a range of disciplines that could arguably run the entire organization themselves.
Well, yeah, you say that. I mean, our CEO, she was in BD for a period of time at Google,
Yeah. Okay.
and so she's she has that experience and background, and so yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really diverse team, but like any team within an organization, yeah, only as good as the value that you can drive for the business. So that's where it becomes really important.
Well, this comes neatly onto our next question once again, which is for all the budding partnerships people out there listening, what advice would you give to your younger self starting out? The younger lawyer or the younger uh, student considering law, perhaps the do's and don'ts of partnership creation and development.
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe I'll maybe I'll touch on what I think a good partnerships professional, some like innate
Mm,
and inherent skills that you should work on and develop might be. So, when I'm looking to hire for the team, or looking to build skills within the team, there's really a few key areas that I think are really important for a partnerships person. One I would say is thinking innovatively and like you said, being entrepreneurial.
mhm.
Um, I've seen in some organizations, partnerships can just be taking orders from product. But I think given our roles and our closeness to the market and the partners that we work with and have a really good understanding of what's happening in the market, it's really incumbent on partnerships team to be thinking of ideas and taking ideas to the business, to product teams, for ideas that they can pursue that those product or business teams might not be seeing because they don't have the same on the ground experience that we do. So I'd say, firstly, I think the best partnerships people and organizations are like mini innovation hubs. So thinking innovatively is incredibly important. Um, Being a great communicator is
Yeah.
incredibly important as well. Like that's an obvious one, but whether it's in docs or slides or presenting on a stage or to a small group or in exec meetings, I think the best partnerships people that I've seen are ones who can really get the point across in a succinct and easy to understand way, and kind of build relationships, trust, and really bring people on the journey in that way. Um, Another really key point I would say is stakeholder management skills. This becomes increasingly important as the organization you're in expands. There can be often a really complex stakeholder matrix, and so making sure you don't operate in a silo, but you get the buy-in of the senior leaders that you need the buy-in from. You bring them on the journey. That's really important, I would say. And then like the last piece that I would say is really, really important for a partnerships person is someone who's fairly comfortable operating in the gray, right?
Yes. Yes.
So often partnerships can start as this nebulous concept where you kind of have an inkling or you have a feeling that there might be some kind of value you can get out of a partnership, but you're just not sure what it is at the time. And then, the partnerships team is responsible for kind of sharpening the pencils, honing in on the areas of the partnership that could add value for both parties, and then, working with the business to really bring it to life. So they're probably what I'd say is like four kind of key areas that I think are important for budding partnerships professionals to have a think about.
I think that last one particularly rings true, which is you kind of got like a feeling or an instinct that there could be something between these two partners or multiple partners, but it's just an instinct, and then you have to go from instinct into actually business case aligned objectives, all of the above, and that's the tricky bit. I think is I guess is keeping everyone internally inspired and motivated that there is something here, but we just need a little bit of time to work through it.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah, but I guess linked to that again, having created partnerships for a significant chunk of your career now, a long time. What are your top tips when it comes to creating high-performing teams and winning cultures? Because as you say, you're working with people, lots of people internally, externally. I mean, partnerships arguably working with everybody, actually, both internally and externally. How do you go about creating incredible cultures, winning cultures?
Yeah, look, that's a great question, and there's a lot of literature out there on this. I would say that I'm probably not going to do it justice, but um, there's kind of a few things that I think about as a leader. One is like, and they're all kind of quote driven. I don't know why, but one quote I've always loved is "Accept it for who you are and expect it to be your best." And I think the reason that I love that quote is because it really encompasses to me the idea that everyone should be free to come as who they are to work, but
Absolutely.
that as a leader, you're doing your best to make sure that you're pushing those people to deliver to the best of their ability, and that's really a key part of leadership. There's another great quote, I guess, or idea that I heard recently, which was like leaders in the past became leaders because they had high IQ. So smart people who were great at their job then found their way into leadership positions, but didn't always make for great leaders or even really care about being great leaders. Then probably over the 2000s, we've seen a shift to EQ,
Yeah.
so emotional intelligence and people who are highly emotional intelligent getting into leadership roles. And then I heard this great like move on from that, which is in the interconnected world we live in, there's much more of a focus now on WeQ. So that concept of collaborating and working with the team and others to find the best outcome. Um, because you can't do everything yourself, right? And even if you can, you're not gonna get the best outcome without kind of some level of diversity of thought. So I think it's that kind of mindset really enables you to embrace the individual backgrounds and strengths of each member in the team and really invest in them and care about them personally and professionally. And when you do that, I would say that really kind of elevates the team. They can see that they feel pushed, but they feel cared for. They feel like they have psychological safety. They feel like they have the ability to try things and fail. And that is, in my mind, what creates a like a high performing team, but also a winning culture, right? People who want to turn up to work, they enjoy turning up to work. And often, like I said, like I focused a little bit on leadership there because I think it does often come top down. And so as leaders, everyone has a really important role to play in kind of building a winning culture and investing in their people to create high performing teams. There's this, have you seen I think it's Kim Scott, the
Yes,
Radical Candor book, kind of
I love.
a bit like that, right? That kind of four box grid. If you're not kind of being honest and pushing your team enough, then they can kind of get lethargic and coast or feel like they're not cared about. And actually, having the hard conversations and pushing the team is really important to make sure that they feel satisfied with the work that they're doing, with the development that they're getting, and also they can see how what they are doing ties specifically back to having an impact on the business.
I
Um,
think. Oh, sorry,
yeah.
Michael. I'm so sorry. After you.
No, it's all right. I was just gonna say there's like a lot of other stuff that I could talk about on this front. Like I said, I've been at Xero, it'll be 12 years this year, and in that time, been across three CEOs, including a founder CEO, and they all had their different styles. But I think at Xero, we've always had this really special culture based on like a really core set of values. And so I've kind of seen it all, and I think the team, our senior leadership team, has certainly done a great job at investing in and making sure that we feel connected as a team, despite being all around the globe.
I mean, you've got an incredible reputation as an organization. I just wanted to just touch on one piece before we perhaps come on to our last question, if I may, around kind of conflict. And you mentioned kind of challenging conversations when it comes to creating cultures. And I think culturally, as Brits, perhaps as New Zealanders as well, that may particularly as Brits, there's sometimes a hesitation to have that difficult conversation or challenging conversation. And actually, the notion of conflict can be seen as something, oh, don't want to go there. But actually, once you've had that hard conversation, you come closer together. Because actually, I think the flip side of not having that difficult conversation can often lead to something like boredom, which can lead to disengagement because you're not being true and honest and authentic. So it's really heartening that you touched on that I think out of conflict actually comes really incredible things. But conflict's often given a bad rep.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think this is like the same thing in the Kim Scott Radical Candor book, right? Which is challenge directly, care personally. If you challenge directly but you don't care personally, that just comes across as you're being rude or you're kind of undermining the person. But when you have that balance between really deeply caring about a member of your team and challenging them directly, so you can push them to be their best, then that's when you get into that kind of radical candor space, and that's where the magic happens. Like I always think of it as like a circle of comfort, and when you push yourself outside of your zones, which I've done a little bit in my career, I know like how uncomfortable it can feel,
Yeah.
but they're the times that I've had the most growth, the most accelerated growth, and that's what I want for people on my team. And but doing that in a way where they don't feel like they're cast adrift and a sink or swim. That's very much kind of supporting them to try and fail
I think when you
and
feel a little bit of discomfort, whether it's in your personal life or professional life, whatever it is, I think that's actually a sign of a gem, because I think anything that comes out of discomfort, sometimes a little bit of pain, but you've got to be careful on the pain, of course, but certainly the discomfort, that's where the growth happens. And as you say, that's where the magic happens. I really believe in that. On our startup journey, it's incredibly hard. And on Xero's journey, it's been incredibly hard, particularly in the first years, but you wouldn't have got to where you are with 4 million customers if it hadn't have been hard, or if it wasn't indeed hard. And I think that pervades the entire culture through your people, through to your external partnerships and everybody. But it's a testament to your success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, to bring it right back around to partnerships, right? I think the same applies in partnerships. Often those ones that feel a little uncomfortable, it might not be something that you've done before. It's probably easy to write off because it's going to be hard to qualify. They are often the ones that are the gems, right? That really are worth their weight in gold if you can kind of work them through. So
It's amazing what you can find when you look around the corner.
that's
Um,
right.
well, look, to round us off, one question, if I may, because I could certainly talk. I think we could both talk about culture for quite a long time and how it relates to partnerships. But what do you see the future holding for businesses when it comes to creating partnerships? And what, if anything, will you and Xero be doing differently?
Yeah, good question. Um, so I think working inside a technology company, what is really apparent to me, and I think we probably apparent to us all, is really just how fast technology is moving.
Mm,
There are,
scarily.
gosh, a lot of smart people out there building a lot of great products and bringing them to market at pace. So with that in mind, I think like given how long Xero's been around, and other technology companies have been around, and kind of trying to keep pace. I think what you'll see, at least inside technology companies, is probably a focus on not spreading yourself too thin. So,
Mm,
and what do I mean by that? I mean, like I talked a little bit about earlier, investing the resources that you do have, your product and end resources, or whatever the case might be, investing them into kind of core competencies for you as a business. Like, what's your core competency? And then when you're kind of looking to broaden out your products or your markets or whatever, looking a lot more at partnerships for how you can do that. So there's that classic build by partner model, right? And I think I mentioned earlier, Xero in the early days, very much like most technology companies, wanted to build a lot of its own products. But we're definitely seeing now, in terms of our ambitions and to achieve our vision, it's going to be really important for us to seriously consider partnerships with every thing that we want to build so that we can bring it to market faster, rely on a partner who's an expert in the area that we might not necessarily be. So in terms of kind of the change that I'm seeing, and that I'm seeing within the partnerships organization, is I think as technology continues to grow at pace, there's going to be a much more reliance on partnerships within an organization to support the business to grow and launch new products. And I think, look, for everyone listening, that means it's a really incredibly exciting time to be in a partnerships role within any company, and particularly in a technology company. And so, yeah, look, I'm excited, and I feel really, really lucky to be in the role that I'm in at Xero.
Michael, thank you so much for sharing your advice and tips when it comes to creating partnerships. Perhaps you come back maybe in a year's time, and we can look at what's happened on the technology with the technology landscape over the last year. And it'll be I think, quite scary how AI perhaps might have popped into, done some tinkering with partnerships.
Oh, it's already happening, Greg.
But yes, it's actually quite scary. Oh, funny enough, actually, someone described Chat GPT to me. You'll appreciate this as having the equivalent of the knowledge of a first-year postgraduate lawyer, and I thought, oof, that's quite scary. But well, look, thank you. Love you to come back onto Game Set Match Up, and just wanted to say massive thank you for all your time.
Thanks for having me along, Greg. Yeah, enjoy the conversation, and would love to come back another time.
Take care. All the best. You definitely will.
See you later.
Bye.
Thanks for joining this week's Game Set Matchup. Tune in to hear more about the need to knows and the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating successful business partnerships.